There are over 100,000 people who immigrate to New Zealand every year with the intention to make New Zealand their home, leaving behind everything they know as normal day-to-day life and having to learn new ways of doing things, new norms, new cultures, and different values. There are many people who struggle with this transition and find it challenging to adjust and settle, so they can call and make New Zealand their home. The purpose of this podcast is for me to share my journey and our challenges with the hope that you can learn from me and my family and have a softer landing. There will be good days and bad days, but with time, more good days. I believe we have made the right choice for our family. I want to try and help you do the same, but hopefully with a softer landing. This is Soft Landing, and I am your host, Brett Corlett.
Welcome to this podcast, designed for anyone thinking about, preparing for, or who has just immigrated to New Zealand. Subscribe now so you never miss an episode. Drawing from his personal experience, this series will guide you through the process of preparing for your move and helping you navigate the challenges of immigration.
Hello everybody, so welcome back for those that listen to me regularly. It's nice to have you back and join me. And for those that haven't listened before, I really encourage you and urge you, please go back to episode number 1. It's really important that you try and listen from the beginning. I do try and give all my podcasts in chronological order, but it's not only that, it's also just to get to know me a little bit better. Why would you want to listen to this person that's on the other end of the world in New Zealand and my opinion on things with not knowing, well, why listen to me? So it's really getting to know me a little bit better and my journey and why I share what I share. At the end of the day, it's really just to try and help any immigrant moving to New Zealand and learn from us. So that's really why I do this. So it's just encouraging you to go to the beginning. But if it's your first time and you're listening, just welcome. I'm very excited today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about about schooling and getting your kids into school. I know that it's a hot topic and a lot of questions, and a lot of people also wonder, when I say people that are immigrating to New Zealand. It's a big thing, never mind for yourself and everything that you got to go through, but you really think about your children. It's like, how do I get them into school? How do they adapt with school? What are the things I need to make sure I'm prepared for? What documentation do I need? What are the costs around? There's so many questions around schooling and your children and getting them into school. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit around those. I'm no expert. Again, I'm just reminding you, I'm sharing from my experience, from our journey coming to New Zealand. So as I said, no expert advice. It's just in our opinion what we've experienced, and hopefully you can learn from us. So we will get into it, and I say we, and I'll explain why I'm saying we, is we'll get into a little bit of detail later on in the podcast around specifics. But I think we'll start off by maybe just sharing a little bit of our story and our journey with our kids. So when I say we, it's because my wife is actually joining me on the podcast today. So I'm roping her in. Podcasts and YouTube channels and everything has been new for me. And I've even started getting her to do some content, which I've started sharing on my YouTube channel. So now I've even got her into her first podcast. So I'll introduce her shortly and get her just to tell you a little bit about herself and her journey. But we will talk specifically around the kids. Just bear with us. It's not only her first podcast that she's doing, but it's also my first interview that I'm doing. So I'm really using her as a bit of a guinea pig. But I do think it's a very important topic to talk on. And my wife has been amazing with getting our kids enrolled and just really trying to navigate the new way of doing things in a new country. And it's come with its challenges, which she will share. But I think it'll be good for her to tell from her perspective. So, hey, love. Welcome on the podcast. You can introduce yourself a little.
Hello, world. Just apologies in advance. When you have young kids, they like to bring their germs home from school. So I am a bit croaky and a little bit nasal today. So it's not probably my best podcast voice as my first interview. But hey, and thanks for listening to us. And I hope this is a topic that's valuable to everybody that's listening.
Well, maybe that's the perfect start, is also to tell them love. So I'm sure it's the same back in South Africa and any other country, but definitely in New Zealand we've found with our daughter who, when we got here, she was just turning 3 and she's turned 5 now. The schools, especially the little schools, are a petri dish full of germs, and they're guaranteed to bring it home and share with the rest of the family. So that has happened in our household, as my wife has explained. I've just got over it, so I have got a bit of a niggle, and every now and again I cough. But I know she's not at the best of health, my wife either. I had a bit of a sore throat, and my daughter's just getting over it as well. Maybe that's also another exclaimer we should just put in place is we don't have a support structure. If you've listened to any of my other podcasts, we've explained I don't have the luxury of calling mom, or meaning my mom, granny, or calling my sister or aunties or anything to help look after the kids. So we do have our kids outside. We are trying to attempt our teenager who's 13 to look after our 5-year-old. So let's fingers crossed see how that goes. And if it doesn't go well and we start getting a knock at the door or screaming outside the door, we may need to pause and go sort things out. So we're going to try our best to get through the next half an hour, 40 minutes without an interruption from the children. So let's see how it goes. But yes, let's hope we don't cough too much and we're not too croaky and we'll get through it. So maybe, love, what you can do is start explaining a little bit. When we arrived, a big thing I've said on some of the podcasts before is we didn't rush into getting the kids into school. It wasn't, I know a lot of people are really determined within the first week, 2 weeks, whatever, you've got to get your kids in school, get them registered, get them going. It wasn't something that we did with our son or our daughter. Maybe just start there and talk about that a little.
Yeah, 100%. So as Brett has mentioned in some of his previous podcasts, is that we were very fortunate that we could be in the position where we chose for me not to start working straight away, because it was important for me to make sure that the family was settled and build the home and furnish the home and all of that jazz. And what came with that is also the conscious decision not to enroll our kids into a school straight away, immediately. With me not working, it meant that I had time to be able to look after the kids while we tried to settle and figure out where we wanted them to go to school first, and investigate the schools in the area and things like that. So everybody's got different situations where you need to start working as you hit the ground, kind of thing, and it's important for you to get your kids enrolled into school. But for us in our scenario, I think for our eldest, he was 11 at the time, we chose not to enroll him in a school for the first couple of months. So that time was spent, if you've listened to the previous podcasts, all of the turmoil and the chaos and the flooding and the XYZ, we eventually settled in an area based on some of the good reports that we had on the schools that we wanted to attend in the area. And our prize one goal for our son at the time was that we wanted to get him into a special character school in the area that we chose. And once we had found a rental in the area and enrolled at the school that we wanted him to go to, we actually discovered that there was quite an extensive waiting list to get him into that specific school. So we did the enrollment and everything to get him in there, but they couldn't give me a timeline on how long it would take for him to enter into that school. So with that in mind, we had to get him into a school eventually. He couldn't have too much time off, although he would have loved it, gaming permanently. We then enrolled him in another school that we were zoned for in the area as part of the state schooling in our area. So that being said, he probably only entered school 3 months after we first arrived. So that gave him some good downtime to be able to familiarize himself with the surroundings. I made sure that I took them with me wherever I went to get them associated and used to the areas.
So maybe I just want to add on there, and I know I don't want to lose your train of thought, but just so people, a couple of things. First thing is, just understand when my wife is talking about, what did you call it, the semi-private school? You gave it a
special character
school. So that was a semi-private school that we were on a waiting list for. So what Amy's meaning there is, we were hoping we could get him in there straight away, but because the waiting list was so long and with no guaranteed timeline, and even when we pushed them to try to give us an estimate, they were saying it could be anywhere up to 12 months. We knew we had to get him into a state school. So that's what we're meaning by the two different types of school. So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is, I can just share. I was the first one working and Amy wasn't working with the kids. I found it awesome to be able to see how Amy was able to go on day trips with them, even just be it to the beach, to the parks, to the museums or anything. Even if, although it means some of them I wasn't going on those trips with them, it was awesome to see that it made me feel good that I'd picked up my family and literally brought them to the other end of the world, the real other end of the world, and I could see how it was and is the right decision. So she would share with me on WhatsApp and everything while I was at work, photos, little video clips of everything that they've done for the day. And even although sometimes you feel a little bit excluded and it was like, oh, I wish I could be with them, it still motivated me a lot to say, oh, keep pushing forward. As hard as it is for you, this is definitely the right thing. Look at how your kids are thriving. Look at how they can, your family, meaning your wife and your two kids, are safe to go out into the community without you being there to protect them. And they were perfectly safe, meaning going to the beaches alone, going and walking out on the streets alone, around the parks alone. It really was awesome. And that just gave me a spark. And I know this is about schooling, but I just wanted to share a little bit about that. It really was cool to know that they could spend those first few months just integrating and getting used to the country. And I know that was a blessing for us because not everybody can afford that straight off the bat, especially if both parents are working. You have to put them in school. I get it. I'm just telling you our story, our experience, and that's something that I really enjoyed. So, love, I just wanted to add that on because I think it was so important for somebody else just to understand, especially as a dad. It made me feel good. I really, really loved that, which was awesome. So anyway, carry on with our son, getting him into school for the first 3 months. So you're waiting on that one.
Yep, beautiful. So, as I mentioned, he was 11 at the time, so not having an understanding of how the New Zealand schooling system worked, I was reliant a lot on information that you can read online, as well as speaking to the different schools and getting information. So we'll go through some of the specifics with regards to how old your kids are when they start in the different year levels and things like that. But our son, he entered school into a middle school. In the intermediate levels. He was year 7 when he started. Yep. And there was a really good teacher that he was placed with, and they assigned him a buddy when he first started, just to make sure that when he first started in this brand new school, brand new location, that he had somebody that would show him around and show him the ropes. So they were very good, even being a state school, they were really good at making sure that he felt comfortable and settled and things like that. Some of the interesting things that happened over and above a normal school life was, I think it was 3 weeks into him starting the school. I'm sure you've heard Brett speak about some of the crazy weather events that we've had. Where his school is, it's pretty much at sea level, and we had a lot of rain and his school flooded, and the school app that you download on your phone. Sorry, we just had an interruption.
So we've had an interruption, as we said. My daughter has just walked in. So she's here to ask for something. So give us a second. I'm just going to pause for 1 sec and then we'll continue. So I did warn you. I said that was going to happen. So this is what happens when you don't have your support structure and you can't get granny or auntie or somebody to look after them. And we did try explain to my 5-year-old that it needed to be something very important. And she needed to blow her nose. So mom had to go help her blow her nose. So for all the parents out there, I'm sure you understand. For those that aren't parents yet, this is what you have to look forward to. I'm telling you, don't get me wrong, it's really, really awesome. But yes, this is how life goes. So sorry, love, you can carry on. I know you were trying to explain with our son at school. And I know, as we said, it was the first few months before we got him into school. But when we got him into school, it was 3 weeks in. And then you can carry on from there, 3 weeks in of him being at school.
So yeah, we had some pretty crazy weather events, and there was an excessive amount of rain, and basically the school flooded. It had knee-high water throughout the school, and the school's method of making sure that the kids were evacuated from the school is they send out a broadcast message on the schooling app that said, we're closing the school, evacuating, come and fetch your kids, and they just let the kids go. And it was really an interesting learning curve for us, because I know what they said, when we enrolled at school, make sure that you've got an emergency evacuation plan in case there is an emergency event, that your kids know where to meet you and that kind of thing. But it really blew my mind that they just let all 1,000 kids, all students, just left the school, and you kind of had to find them in the chaos. So couldn't get the car really close to the school, had to park a mile away so I didn't float the car. And I had to wade through knee-deep water to go and find my son in the rain to try and evacuate him from the school, which we did. It wasn't as big a deal. It didn't turn out to be as big a deal now in hindsight. But 3 weeks into the brand new school, the school flooded. And I think the week before that, he also tripped and he fell and he split open his lip. Yeah. So within the first couple of weeks of school, we had a very steep learning curve on how to handle emergency situations and things like that. So that was our, I suppose, learning by fire, but it was much smoother after that.
Well, I think that another thing that people also just need to remember, we're sharing our experiences, but it's not the intention to scare anyone off, okay? So don't listen to our stories and think, oh my goodness, New Zealand is out. There's no way I'm doing it. These people were nuts. Okay, thank you for the warning. We're not coming. No. That's not the intention here. I think it's more the intention is to share our experiences so that, one, if there's anything you can learn from us so you can do it better than us, please do. But we're definitely not trying to scare anyone off. I think this is one of the best things we have ever done, most difficult things we've ever done, but definitely the best things that we've ever done for our family. I do not regret it, and I am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to move my family here. So please, we're not trying to scare anyone off. But getting back to the story, I mean, come on, if you listen to our podcasts, and everybody has their immigration story, so you'll talk to so many different people, but it just didn't seem to end for the first 6 to 12 months of us first being here, from our first rental being flooded, and we had to get another rental because, sorry, that one was not available anymore, to only being here a couple of weeks and then a cyclone hit and going through all of that, which was a learning curve in itself. And like my wife said, my son falling, if you listen to one of my podcasts on the healthcare system, I do mention and talk through it, but he had to do an ACC claim because he split his lip or whatever. We had to go to emergency, and then 3 weeks in, and then there's a flood in the school, and trying to look at the positive now, even talking through the flood at the school, it makes me think that, for us back in South Africa, I don't think the schools would ever say to 1,000 scholars, just go free and go home. But you've got to remember it's a little different here where the kids are free. They've got that safety factor where it still blows my mind. And my son, every time I drive him to school in the morning, he looks at me and like, oh, Dad, enough about it. I see these littlies. It still blows my mind. When I say littlies, I'm meaning if they're like 6 or 7 years old, they're teeny tiny tots, man. And they're walking to school themselves, or riding on their bicycles themselves, crossing roads, traffic lights. It's amazing. I guess that's the way the life should be, and it should be the way the world is. But the kids are free. So that's why a school would say to the kids, go home, because they know they'll get on their bikes, or they'll walk home, or they'll catch a bus. Yes, catch a bus. These littlies catch buses all by themselves. They're just free. So it does make sense that they do it. But for us that are used to, well, you've got to protect your kids out in the big wide world and be there, because it's just, it's so dangerous. It's different. And I'm not saying every other country is dangerous, but it's a reality in South Africa, unfortunately, where we have to safeguard your kids. You have to be there. You would never let your 5, 6, 7-year-old out on the streets alone, or out in the shopping malls alone. Parents have to be there to keep them safe. It's just the reality. Whereas here, man, they literally run free. You see kids running around the neighborhood, you see kids riding around on bicycles, and little kids, and they're very free. So it would make sense that after a flood, the best way and the safest way for them to get the kids home, let them go.
Exactly. If they all had their evacuation emergency plan,
they would know. Go meet mom at the top of that hill, because mom knows, or dad knows, we're going to pick you up there. So run to the top of that hill, and I'm really not trying to scare you with the weather. They do have tsunami warnings here and drills here. So, and they test the tsunami sirens and all the rest of it as well. So the kids know if there's a tsunami warning, they know where to run to the highest point. So I think they're a little bit more prepared around those natural disaster type things. It seems to be normal for them. So for us, that it's not normal, we got different worries, not necessarily the weather. That's been such a different thing, but it's what we've had to learn. Now that we've been here a while, it's like the norm, man. But I think in the beginning, especially in those first few months where it was just thing after thing after thing, we were like, oh my goodness, what's going on with this weather? It's nuts, man. So yeah. That
being said, I think we arrived where there was crazy weather events. That's not the norm. So it has calmed down a lot since then. Yeah. And people also have questions about things like earthquakes and things like that. Where we are up in Auckland, we've never felt anything. They call New Zealand the Shaky Isles or something like that. We've never felt anything. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but we've never felt anything. But the New Zealand Civil Defence and that kind of thing, they're regularly testing their tsunami warning, siren alerts and things like that. So it's just something just to be mindful of. We're not used to it coming from South Africa, where we come from, so it's just something to be prepared for. it's not for you to be panicky about it,
No,
but it's more
no.
just to make sure that you're enabled to make sure you've got those plans in place should worst case scenario happen.
Yeah. Look at the positives. They actually plan. They actually have a plan for when these things happen. And even, I promise you, and I know this is not the podcast about it. Yeah, no, let me not go down a rabbit hole. We digress a lot. But it's just funny for a foreigner and an immigrant. It is different for us. So yes, you picked up our son from school, wading through knee-high water. That must have been fun.
Yeah, he loved it. It was a bit nerve-wracking initially, but that meant that the school was closed for a couple of days because it had to dry out. So he was all game for not having to go to school.
And for my preteen or teen now, because now we're 2.5 years in, if he could miss school, he's happy, very happy.
Yeah, beautiful. Then our littlest, who's now 5, she had just turned 3 at the time. I only enrolled her into a ECE centre, which stands for Early Childhood Education Centre. I only enrolled her, I think it was August, so it was probably 7 months after we arrived. In hindsight, I probably should have waited until spring to do that, because I think also within the first couple of weeks of enrolling her there, she picked up a flu virus, and that was interesting. She then gave it to me, and it was pretty chaotic around
Sharing
that time.
Sharing is caring. That's how it works.
But that's what we chose to do. Didn't enroll them straight away, as I mentioned, and it worked well for us. If anything, it's just shown us how incredibly resilient our kids are. They've integrated really well, not without its challenges. I mean, we're all learning a new way of doing things, but you go through that steep learning curve and you put your head down and you get it done.
Yeah. Look, I think there was Amy's brought on a thing now is just, I keep reiterating it, but we're talking from our experience, and this is what worked for us. And what was so nice is we had that blessing of not having to rush into it, and I think there's definitely benefits to that. But I do understand if you have to because you're both working, that's fine. But I think what's important to maybe just take out of this is you're going to have those challenges. You just got to stick by each other, get through it, and the kids are really resilient. They're amazing. Okay, so let me carry on with the interview, love, and I know you've shared a little bit about our first couple of months of being here and getting our son into school and getting our daughter into school, being both middle school or kindy at that stage. But maybe you can now explain in a little bit more detail. And this is where my wife is so much better than I, because she did this, is she'll explain to you a little bit about the actual wording for the different types of schooling and the different levels and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to hand over to you on that one, because this is where it blew my mind, because I'm in my middle age now, and I go back to my South African days, and I still sometimes talk standards, and my wife said to me, geez, that's really old, never mind grades. So okay, so it's very now all of that is null and void. It's all now total new terminology and everything like that for me, so it blows my mind. So I'll let you explain it a bit better.
All right, so again, just a disclaimer, I'm not an education specialist. I am not a teacher. I am only providing some of the learnings from our own personal experience. So if there is a need for a proper interview with a teacher or something like that, maybe we can set something up. But these are just some high-level guidelines and information that I've shared. But that being said, there's a lot of information online. But let's work through some of the core points that I thought was important to us. And just a bit of an understanding of how the schooling system works here in New Zealand. All right, so first off, schooling is compulsory for children from the ages of 6 to 16. All right, so there are some kids here that they reach 16 and they choose to leave school at that time, or they can continue to the end of schooling, which is obviously what we would prefer for our kids, but not to say that it's not impossible for children who have left school at the age of 16 not to find work and that kind of thing. There's still lots of opportunity here, but compulsory schooling is from age 6 to 16.
I'll add in on that one, love. So just when they say they can leave at 16, so what they generally do is some kids at the age of 16, instead of going and furthering their schooling to get what we would call like a matric, getting that final year of schooling on a theoretical side of things, they can go and look into a trade. So they can go and rather start potentially skilling up as becoming I don't know, maybe they want to become a plumber or they want to become an IT engineer or whatever else. So they can study further, but from the age of 16 into a specific area that they want to. So they didn't need to get their final year's schooling, year 13 or whatever it is, to be able to go to a university to start studying to become a doctor, for example. So they could go that other route. They recognize that, and there's a path for people and kids to go that way, which I find actually really cool.
Yeah. All right, then primary and secondary education, it's available for children anywhere from the ages of 5 to 19. So children will typically start year 1 when they are 5 turning 6, unlike in South Africa where children typically started when they were 6 turning 7. And there is coverage until children turn 19. So it's quite it covers for everybody, it's quite open for everybody. And I will go through some of the different classifications of, where you start in ECE, early childhood education, primary school, middle school, senior school, and all of that jazz. But those coming across with little kids, probably ECE would be a good place to start.
Before you start with the ECE, love, just one thing, sorry, and I know I'm interrupting you again, and people have been thinking, Jesus, husband that keeps interrupting. Well, maybe they'll relate, I don't know. But where you were talking about the ages of 5 to 19, and kids that come into school, especially the littlies, when they're 5, back from where we are in South Africa, and I can only talk from a South African perspective, is your kids would usually start actually at the age of 6, and it would be at the beginning of the calendar year. So what you would do is you would enroll your kids in what we called grade 1 from the age of 6 from that January, okay?
I'm getting there.
Oh, you're getting there. Okay. So my wife is going to explain this to you. It's just their enrollment works differently here. So sorry, love. I should know. The professional knows it. Sorry, my bubby.
No, all good.
Go.
All right, when I get to primary school, I will touch on that. All right, so ECE for the littlies. So ECE, it's not compulsory, but it's widely attended in preparation for school, especially when the kids are nearing that age of 5. The ECE centres will start helping them with basic academic stuff, reading, writing, listening to sounds and things like that. But basically ECE caters for children between the age of 3 and 5, and you can receive up to 20 hours per week free of ECE childcare. So you would enroll at an ECE centre, and if they are funded by the Ministry of Education, they will receive money for you to attend that school for up to 20 hours per week. Now, for us in our personal scenario, we didn't have extra funding available because, as we explained, we were working on one salary for a while. We chose, once we had enrolled our daughter into that ECE centre, to have her enrolled Monday to Friday for mornings only for 3 or 4 hours per day, which made up the 20 hours. If you stay for full day, you then are charged a fee over and above that 20 hours. So the 20 hours will be deducted from your weekly fee, and then you pay for that. Now, I don't want to give you how much it costs because it very much depends on the ECE centre that you join. You'd have to get pricing from them on their pricing structure and availability and all that thing. But all I can tell you is it is quite expensive. I think of some of the schools that we had investigated for our daughter at the time, less the 20 hours of ECE per week. I think it was up to $200 per week.
Yeah.
Which it all adds up at the end of the day. So again, luckily we were in a situation at the time where I wasn't working straight away, but once I did start working, I was very luckily able to land a job where one of us was working remotely from home most of the time. So she would go for the morning, and then one of us would pick her up, and then she would stay at home with the parent that is working, entertaining herself, watching a tablet, watching TV, playing games, building Lego, whatever the case may be.
Just before you go on to the next one, just so we're clear, on ECE, that's kindy, right?
It is kindy, but there are different categorizations of ECE versus kindy, where kindy might cover other things over and above what an ECE would.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into kindy because I don't have any experience on it. But early childhood education, they care for them, they teach them, they sing songs with them, they draw with them, colour with them, let them play outside. They've got amazing facilities for kids.
So it's
outside,
like nursery school.
Sand pits and things like that. Yeah, it's a preschool basically.
Okay.
All right. I do know, because there's going to be the question of kids that are younger than 3. I don't have any experience on that, but I do know from what I've seen on Google and things like that when you research is that younger children can receive some support through other funding streams like funding subsidies and things like that, but it has to be through licensed ECE services. But again, would need to be investigated for your specific situation. I can't speak to those because I don't have a little that was younger than
And you'd also have to look at your visas and what visas you're on and whether you qualify or not. I don't know. So we don't have that information. So that would be a tough one for us to answer, yeah.
Yeah. But I suppose there are options.
There must be options, yeah. Look, there are au pairs and there are people that will look after your kids and daycares and everything. They are available. It's just whether you can afford it budget-wise. So you just need to do your homework on that one. So it's not like there's no options. There definitely are options. You just got to see what would work with you budget-wise.
Yeah.
And what you qualify for, yeah.
All right, then leading on to primary school. So primary school is from year 1 to year 6. So they don't talk about grades like back in South Africa. They talk about years. So year 1 is when your littlies will start anytime from their 5th birthday. And what Brett was alluding to earlier is that the kids don't start on the calendar year. So if your child is turning 5 to 6 in that year, they don't all start in January of that year. So if your child has turned 5 in March, you can, anytime from the time they turn 5 up until their 6th birthday, you can enroll them in school. So, for example, our little one, she turned 5, I think it was March-ish, and we chose for about 2 months later, we enrolled her into primary school. So it all depends on their development, if you think that they're ready to enter into school, which we were comfortable with. So that's how the primary school works. Then a primary school will go up to year 6, and year 6 is typically when the kids are between 10 and 11 years old. All right. Then the next level up would be middle school, and that is generally for the years 7 to 10, where the kids start between the ages of 11 and 12, and then they finish year 10 at around 15 years old. When you are in year 7 and 8, it's also referred to sometimes as an intermediate school. The kids will transition from primary school to an intermediate school with some specialist teaching, and it includes a blend of primary and secondary school approaches as they transition towards getting prepared for senior school. Then years 9 and 10 are the final 2 years of middle school, and it is also sometimes referred to as junior secondary schools, and this is for kids aged between around 13 to 14 years old. Depending on your area, you can have middle schools separate from high school or senior schools, but in our case, the middle school and the senior school are on one campus. It's quite a big school, but the one campus is separated by a driveway in between, where you have the middle school kids on the one side of the driveway, and you've got the senior school kids on the other side of the driveway, and they're allowed across the driveway to keep them separate.
So it's more important just to understand between primary, middle, etc., so that you can look for when I'm assuming your zoning and what schools in the area are up to what levels. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. All right, then on to senior schools. They're also sometimes referred to as high schools or colleges when you're doing your research. It's for kids from the years 11 to 13. So 13 would be your equivalent of like a matric, where the kids are generally within the ages of 15 to 18. So it's the senior school where children will work towards what they call the NCEA. So the National Certificate of Educational Achievement is the main qualification for secondary school students in New Zealand. Okay. So the NCEA, I don't know too much about it because I don't have any kids doing NCEA at the moment, but it works high level. It works on a system of credits that need to be gained in your various subjects and at levels from level 1 to 3. All right, so again, there's a lot of information online about NCEA, but NCEA is only applicable for senior school students from years 11 to 13. Cool. In our experience with our son, the pressure on the on the secondary education is not as pressurized as what we had back in South Africa. Back in South Africa, our son was enrolled in a private school at the time. He has done amazingly well, but I don't find it as pressurized. They don't have strict cycle tests every Friday and things like that. It's been a lot more relaxed, and I think personally the scope of learning has been a little bit broader to make sure that they master something that they're working on before they move on to the next topic.
Look, I know it can be a big debate about the schooling and if it's as good as back home or not, or private schools back home or not, and I'm not going to go into that in this podcast today. That's not the intention. I'm not trying to create a debate on what's better or not. It's more just trying to share practical experience from from our point of view. I'm going to let you carry on. Maybe just one thing I will do, and I know Amy will probably mention it, I will share some of the links for the government education websites as well, but you've got education.gov.nz. I will share it under the description as well, so that you can get it there if you want to do further investigations too. Sorry, love, carry on.
Yep, all good. All right, something that was important for me to know was the subjects that they learn at school. Is it the same? Is it different? So there's core school subjects, or what they call foundational subjects, which would be things like the standard English, maths and science. And then you have additional subjects such as social science, which would be things like history, geography, social studies. Then you have arts, which would be things like music, performing arts or drama, and art, physical art like painting and things like that. Then you have physical education, which covers things like fitness, skills development, well-being and health. Language options, from our experience, we've had Spanish, Japanese or Maori, for example. Then there's technology, which is quite cool as well, which they cover digital literacy, coding. My son's been exposed to some 3D printing and things like that, making animations, which has been pretty cool. Then I think once the kids move on to senior school, they will have a few core subjects that they focus on that are compulsory, but then they then choose some elective subjects over and above, which they will work on alongside the core subjects. I stand corrected on the amount of subjects, but I think once you're in senior school, it's like 5 or 6 subjects. And the electives that the children can choose can vary depending on the school and your student's interest. So this is where they'll start working on the NCEA levels. What I found quite interesting is that there's a lot of focus or a lot of consideration given to career goals and pathways for your kids. So if your child has a specific career path in mind, that they can choose subjects that are relevant to that specific field. So if, for example, they're interested in doing something medical one day as a career, they will focus more on subjects such as science, which covers things like chemistry and physics. Or if they want to become a professional athletics coach, that kind of thing, they've got subjects and pathways that would help them to achieve that as a career goal, rather than forcing everybody to fit into the same box. Obviously, the core subjects you still have to do, like maths and English, but you don't have to take PE if you're not interested in PE and it's not going to work towards your medical career, for example. Any questions on that?
Well, the only thing I was thinking was, what sparked in my head was just a story about just an experience. When my son joined the school, building on that freedom that I was talking about, is that, I know you even said it, is they do a lot of PE or physical ed, and he started doing running at the school, and how they set the kids free again. So they do running around the neighborhood. Okay, so
the 5K run.
A 5K run around the neighborhood in between the houses and whatever else, it's just secure enough to do that. So that also was just, it's awesome to know that they can be that free and be that safe and actually just let the kids run around the neighborhood of the school to get their kilometers in. The other thing was also cool, they let them go to the beach. I don't know the teacher did go with, but the beach is within walking distance. So they'd walk to the beach for something. I don't even know what they were doing on the beach, but they walked to the beach for something. And Matthew would tell me about, my son would tell me about going to the beach and being on the beach, which was cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Me being the typical helicopter parent, because I still haven't learned how to let my kids go yet. I still have South Africa's safety ingrained into me. On the day that he had the beach visit, I was a stalker, viewing from afar, checking what these kids were doing on the beach, and they literally went to go check out the rocks and look at the sea anemones and the mussels.
Is that what they were doing? Okay.
The things like that on the beach. So so depending on where the school is, but the school, they went to the beach for the day, and I think they do that quite often, like at the end of term, if it's a nice sunny week or whatever, they will plan for the last day of term for them to go and have a visit at the beach together, which is pretty cool. All right, choosing a school. You might have heard people talking about the decile system. The decile system has recently been done away with, I think, in the last 2 years. So this is something I had to do a bit of research on, because when we first arrived, the decile system was still in place. But it's been replaced with something called the equity index, which just means that the government distributes funding to different schools and things like that based on their equity index. So it estimates the extent to which young people face socio-economic barriers in achieving good education. The range of the equity index, it's a number system. It ranges between 344 to 569, where the higher number indicates a greater level of socioeconomic disadvantage, and subsequently there's more funding provided to those schools that have that higher index. The national average is 463, but I just must make mention it's not a measure of the quality of the school itself. You could have amazing schools that have really, really good systems and facilities and things like that. They just might have a higher number of students that are from socioeconomic disability or disadvantage, and it's a rating that's provided by the government, and then they provide funding to the schools for that.
I don't know if you'd know, but it's just making me think. Does that maybe give an indication on the area and the type of socioeconomic demographic in the area, I would imagine?
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Okay, so you could use that as a bit of an indicator if you're choosing a place to rent, is looking at that equity index of the schooling, because it'll give you an idea of the demographic in the area.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
All right. And then also when coming to choosing a school, schools or public schools or state schools as they're known as are zoned for your area. So many people will research the schools that they want their kids to attend first, and they will then settle in an area that's zoned for that specific school. The schools have a catchment area, so to speak. So you, as one of your documents that you'd have to provide when enrolling at a school would be your physical address. They will double check that you are zoned for that specific school. So that was important for us. The reason why we chose the area that we live in now is because of the zone for the public or state schools in the area. That being said, state schools, in our experience, are still perfectly fine. There isn't such a big shift in the difference between private, semi-private and public schools as there was in South Africa. The public or state schools here are still perfectly 100% fine. I've got no issues with that.
Well, we can add on to that just with our personal experience. So we explained that my son, when we got here, the idea was to have him go to a semi-private school that we put him on the waiting list for, and the same for my daughter. And because we didn't know how long that wait would be, we got him into a state school. So he is in a state school now. And eventually they did get back to us on that waiting list and said there's a slot available. He went for the interview at the semi-private school and he was accepted. But after talking to him, he actually asked us, and we came to an agreement as a family, that he's not going to change from the state school to the semi-private, even although he was accepted, because we've put him through, and this was our decision, because we had already done so much change in his life, moving him from South Africa to here, and how it had taken time for him to build the friendship group and everything, and doing well in the state school he's in. Now to change him to start all over again, we opted that it was actually better for him to stay where he is. So that just talks to what Amy is saying now, that even although it's not as big a difference between state education schools versus semi-private. That's in our experience. That's what we feel at the moment. There's different pros and cons, and you could really go through that. But in our example, that's why we've decided to even keep him at a state school. And now we've actually got two kids in two separate schools, because my daughter, she went to the kindy that fed into the semi-private, and she's in the semi-private. So it just shows you can use both. It's really what works for you.
All right, cool. Right, then just something I need to note is that state or public schools are not completely free. I know everybody says it's free schooling, etc., but there are some gotchas that you need to be aware of, that you need to plan for and budget for accordingly. So yes, school fees in the traditional term, as we knew it back in South Africa, doesn't apply for New Zealand or public schools. So you're not charged a monthly school fee. However, there are costs associated with subjects or course costs that your child attends. Stationery, which goes without saying. Digital equipment and online portals and subscriptions is also a big one, because a lot of the stuff is done online. They go very paperless. Of course, there's things like school uniforms, shoes, school photos and things like that. And some schools, or rather most schools, will ask for a donation. A donation is optional. It is tax deductible, I think.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But those donations goes towards uplifting the school, upgrading their facilities, contributing to their running costs and things like that. So any donations that they use is actually used towards positive upliftment of the school itself. Private schooling, completely different, can be quite expensive. And then semi-private schooling, which is what we've opted for our youngest, but purely because it is a special character school. They do have the option to typically charge a fee over and above the course costs, which we pay for an attendance, or what they call an attendance due or attendance fee.
Maybe just to add, I can't remember if you actually did mention it, but we were talking about the Chromebook, which was a cost. So they go very digital. I think just keeping that in mind from what we used to, maybe it's also just over the years, maybe even South Africa is catching up and they're doing stuff more digitally and online, but you had to save up for that Chromebook, and a Chromebook can cost you anywhere up to $400, and that's in what, I don't know, that was 2 years ago or whenever we bought it. So it is quite a fee that you just got to keep. Oh, you're going to talk to that. Okay, cool. So it's just keeping in mind some of those costs as well. So as cool as it is that they're going more digital and they're getting online, there is fees that you got to think about. It's not all free as per se.
All right. So again, in our personal experience, I can't speak to the upper years in primary school, what kind of equipment they would need. They may use iPads or something like that in the upper levels in the primary school, but from middle school and up, they work on devices. There's less paper, so you have to budget for a Chromebook or something like that has a battery that can last up to a full 6-hour school day. So some schools will have refurbished devices that you can rent from the school.
Yeah, okay.
We chose to buy ours outright. And Chromebooks and things like that, the school will provide you with a list of what their device specifications are, so what you need to buy. So we got our son a Lenovo Chromebook. It's got an amazing battery. It's got like a Google operating system on it. And then the school will post all of the work and homework, and if there is homework, things like that, onto Google Classroom and things like that. But all schools have different platforms and things that they use. This is just in our experience. The higher grades, depending on the subject choices, they may ask that once the kids reach level year 10 or year 11, if they take something, for example, like digital technology, where they have to do a lot of coding, where something might be resource intensive from a computer perspective, they may then ask them to upgrade to a laptop. But again, your school will have to guide you on that, but just keep that in mind. Everyone is not working on paper these days. A lot of the stuff is online or app-based. Right, other things just to keep in mind, school uniforms, they can be expensive. As an example, I bought 2 polo or golf shirts for my son this week. It was $84 for 2 shirts. I bought 1 skirt for my daughter, it was $70. So if you're buying brand new, they can be expensive. But that being said, there are op shops or charity shops or secondhand shops that are available that do stock secondhand school uniforms and things like that. But you need to look around, and then just keep in mind, please budget upfront for the uniforms. It's a nightmare with the wet weather and stuff like that to try and manage with one set of school uniform between washing and that kind of thing. So then sometimes the school will also request that you have a PE shirt and PE shorts and things like that. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you need to pay upfront for the school uniforms. It can be quite costly. Something else that I just wanted to recommend was, especially in winter where we are, it's very wet in New Zealand. So I found school shoes regarding school shoes. Each school has different school shoe requirements. We found that with my son's school, it's more casual. They're allowed to wear sneakers, for example, with no logos and things on that. But I made the mistake when I first bought him shoes that they were fabric shoes, and it rained a lot and his feet were constantly wet. So get them or invest in a good leather school shoe when you start. Something that's a little bit more weatherproof will help keep your kids' feet stay dry in the wet weather.
It's no joke about the wet weather. I can tell you, we're sitting here right now looking out the window and it is raining as we speak. So the weather, it does rain. Not putting you off, you still get sunshine. So don't let them think you don't. And it still gets warm here, but you do get that wet weather. So the kids need something that can keep the feet dry. That said, Matthew, I've done it again, but yeah, we joke. I was trying not to say my kids' names. Okay, we're trying to keep it out of here, obviously being on social media. So I'm clearly failing at that part. But anyway, I'll try to do better. Okay, I was okay with my name and my wife's name. I try to keep the kids out of it. So my son, when he actually goes to school as well, we're talking about going to the beach. The one time they went to the beach, you said he walked in his school shoes through the actual surf, through the waves, through the little river that was feeding into the sea and everything like that as well. So I don't know why they didn't take their shoes off, but they just walk in that and destroy their shoes. So I don't know, it's just different, but it is what they did. So yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, oh my goodness, boy, why didn't you take your shoes off? What the heck? Anyway.
All right, just conscious of time, I've got 1 or 2 more points still to go
through. No, go
through.
for it. We're good. Go for it.
All right. Learning support or special education for kids with special needs or disabilities is available, and there is funding options available for it. I can't talk to the specifics because I don't have experience in it. It would need to be discussed with the applicable schools you're interested in. But basically, from our experience, any kids that have any special needs or disabilities, blindness or whatever the case may be, they integrate into mainstream schools. They do not have separate schools for children that need additional support. So there's funding options available. That may be an extra teacher, a teacher's aid, extra teacher time, help from specialists, special equipment, or whatever the case may be. But our experience is that these kids enter mainstream school. I think my son at the moment in his English class, he has a child that is blind, and they make sure that he's got access to Braille and he's got an aid that will help him to read, the things and that kind of thing. So just something to note that, again, you would contact the specific schools that you're interested in the area to see what facilities that they do have available. But there is definitely learning support for special education needs. So just noting that. And then something else which might be applicable to some of our Afrikaans
or any other language. Yeah, it could be any other language,
There's something called ESOL, which is English for Speakers of Other Languages. So these children would integrate into mainstream schools again, but they have programs where they focus on providing English language instruction to students whose first language is not English. So they're aiming to help them develop the necessary English skills to succeed in their education. They're targeted programs, and some of the schools can receive funding for ESOL from the Ministry of Education. So if English is not your first language, reach out to the schools you're interested in enrolling at and ask what ESOL programs they have available.
Yeah. No, awesome, love. So yeah, besides my two mistakes of dropping my son's name twice, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, go.
All right. So there are online learning options. I'm not going to cover all of that today. The New Zealand Ministry of Education website has a lot of information and resources about it for you to research. But there are online learning options available, online schools. And then just something else that I wanted to note is just with regards to enrolling. Mostly everything is digital, so you need to make sure that you've got digital copies of all your documents. So if you're registering or enrolling at a school for a specific zone, they're going to ask you for a proof of residence, which could be a
bill or something,
electricity bill or something like that. So you've got a proof of residence, copies of your visas, passports, and things like that. Just make sure you've got digital copies of all of that, because that will form part of your enrollment pack that you typically do online. Something else that wasn't on my list that I just wanted to mention is a lot of the schools are app-based. So for an example, we've got 2 kids in 2 completely separate schools. I've got 2 separate apps for them where you report absences, you can check their timetables, you can check their attendance, their reports, and all of that is all app-based and online-based.
Yeah, I've actually found that very cool with my daughter. So I've got access to the app, and they'll even share photos and what they've done and give you updates. So as a parent working, you get a notification via email, you quickly log in and you can go see what they've been up to, what they've done, what's going on. It's actually so cool. It's not just with the schooling with the apps, just so you know. In New Zealand, one thing I've found is they're very much paperless online apps, do it yourself, DIY. They really drive that home a lot. So it's important to make sure you can get online and function with laptops or apps and all the rest of it, have internet access. It's going to be important.
Yeah, 100%. And then probably just to end off with, I think you were going to ask me 3 questions or something like that, just to wrap up. But before you go on to that, just to reiterate the freedom here, I think Brett has mentioned it a few times, is that we are fortunately in an area where my son's school is pretty close to the beach, as we mentioned, and they're able to go and have beach days. For PE, they have the 5 kilometer or 2 kilometer run where they literally need to run around the estuary. They're free. So it's ingrained in me. I will probably forever be a helicopter parent, but the kids are free. They get on the bus, they walk across the street. It's kind of like how we used to think of how our parents used to grow up, to say, I used to walk through 5 meters of snow with my 1 pair of good shoes kind of thing. But that's literally what the kids do here. Yeah.
They're very free. It's so awesome. I've seen it. I even catch the bus into CBD sometimes, and I see a lot of the the kids catching the bus to some of the schools that are a little bit further out of our area and stuff like that. So you see them on the buses. When I mention it, taking my son to school, I see a lot of kids catching the bus. I see a lot of kids walking. I see a lot of kids on those push scooters, electric scooters, bicycles. They're very free. So it's awesome. It really, really is awesome. No, I agree with you there. Cool, love. So I prepped you well. So the one thing I was going to ask is I just wanted to try and end off. I think this is valuable information. It really does help. I know it's not be all and everything and covers every single topic, but it's from my experience and hopefully it helps people. But if there's 3 things that you had to say that are most important in your mind, in your opinion, for people to consider or have done, what are those 3 top things people need to consider?
All right, so the first one that I put down was with regards to what I mentioned about zones. Make sure that you do research. And if you've got friends or family or whoever in the area that can give their personal account on schools and that kind of thing, where you choose your children to go to school is very important. So if you have to choose a slightly less fancy house to get your family or get your children into the school that you want to, that's an important consideration. Obviously you want your kids to be happy at the end of the day. If your kids are really unhappy or you've got them into a school that's not quite what you wanted, it's very difficult to break your lease on your rental to move again and move schools and pay upfront costs for uniforms and things all over again. So just my 2 cents worth. Make sure that you research properly on the schools that you want so that you can find a rental in the zone for that school.
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right. The second important thing was just regards to costs and upfront. Don't be catched or caught out by the fact that the state schools are free. Yes, they are to a certain extent, but there are lots of course costs and things that you need to take into consideration. So as an example, my son will be doing food technology in the second half of the year. I have to pay $90 for the last 6 months of the year to cover the food and I suppose resources and things that they're going to be using for that specific subject. So just keep that in mind. And then there's going to be things that you're going to want to buy, like school photographs, class photographs and things like that. That might be $30 or $50, but it's something you just need to keep in mind. School is not completely free. There are those additional costs, course costs, device costs, online portals, subscriptions and things like that you need to take into account.
Yeah, geez, and we've got a kid that doesn't do much sports. So I can only imagine for those families where kids do a lot of sport, even more costs. Yeah.
And then the third thing I put down, it wasn't specific to schooling per se, but it was more about making sure that you build on your relationship and your communication with your kids. I've tried to have conversations with our teenager now just to make sure that he knows that mom and dad are his safe place. Even if he does something really, really bad and the bottom falls out of his world, I want him to know that he can come to mom and dad for anything. At the end of the day, they are amazing, they are resilient, they integrate beautifully for the most part, but stuff does happen in their world that can affect them. Just make sure that they understand that you are there to be their backstop no matter what. No matter what they do, even if they stuff up, that they know that they can come to you for anything. You have to keep the communication going because the kids here are so free. A lot of stuff can happen and then they won't necessarily tell you about it, and then something might happen and then it's too late. So I don't want to be the preacher about parenting and that kind of thing, but what we found, what worked for us, especially with my son going through the adolescent years, is to make sure that he knows that mom and dad are there for him no matter what. We've got his back no matter what, whether it's an issue with a teacher or a student or a friend or whatever, that they know that they can come to you for anything.
Thanks, love. I think those are 3 very important points. Maybe just to add on, what we will do is I do plan on doing a separate podcast talking about bullying. I know that's another big hot topic. People worry, they hear that there's a lot of bullying that happens here, not only in the work environment but at school, and how that can affect your kids. So I do plan on potentially doing a separate podcast on that, and I have actually got a friend whose daughter was bullied and even videoed when she was being bullied and stuff. So, but that's a separate podcast altogether. And again, I don't want to scare people off. Every country is going to have its challenges. Okay, so New Zealand is not perfect. If you think you're going to come across here and it's going to be a bed of roses and everything's going to be perfect, you're wrong. There are going to be challenges, but friend that I was chatting to earlier today, he was telling me if you had to fill 2 bags, you had to fill your South African bag or your previous home country's bag with all the issues you have here and all the issues in New Zealand, which bag would you choose? So I'm definitely leaning towards the New Zealand bag. It's a lot lighter, much lighter bag. So I do not regret being here. It's one of the best things we've ever done. So Love, thank you for doing the interview. It was cool to have you on my podcast with me. I really loved it, and I hope that you guys learned something, or there was something that you can learn from us here, and that it was of value. I really hope so. If it was, I ask you please share it. The whole goal here is to try and help as many immigrants as possible make New Zealand home and settle as quickly as possible. Learn from us. So if you know of anybody else that's potentially about to move here or has just moved here, share this podcast with them, please, so that they can hopefully learn from us and make it a softer landing for them. I've also got my YouTube channel where, over and above my podcast and us sharing our journey and lessons learned, is I'm sharing a whole lot of content on my YouTube channel where there's visuals of stuff that I'm sharing. For example, I've done a full tutorial on the cost of living and how much it really costs to survive and thrive here in New Zealand. I share templates for budgeting, etc. So there's a lot of information we share on here. I've even got my wife to start sharing some content on that YouTube channel around walking around the neighborhood and seeing how safe it is and what you can do on a Saturday morning, which has been really, really cool. So go to that YouTube channel. It's Soft Landing NZ, so at Soft Landing NZ. Please go subscribe and turn on your notifications, so when I share more information, you'll get those notifications. So thanks for joining us today. I hope you all stay safe, and I look forward to having you join me on my next episode. Keep well. Cheers.
Bye.